So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Fest 3 continues for cargo and commercial ship surveyors. Delighted to see everybody online and very pleased to introduce our first speaker from Standard P&I Club. We have two speaking today. Always good to have input from the P&I clubs. So I'm very grateful to Captain Akshat Arora. Pardon me, he's talking to you today from Singapore. He's based at the Standard P&I Club offices in Singapore. He works in the loss prevention department with a particular focus on crew claims, environmental compliance and dry cargo related matters. Akshat is a master mariner, 11 years of seagoing experience on dry cargo ships and over 10 years of shore experience handling marine safety, security, loss prevention, commercial operations, vetting and technical management. And when I contacted Eve, who I'm not sure what Eve's title is. He your boss, Eve? Akshat, I don't know.
Yeah, he's the director of loss prevention.
Right,
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Eve Vandenborn. I said, can somebody talk on liquefaction? And he said, Akshat's the man. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Mike, and hello everyone. Good day. Thanks for taking time today to attend this session. Today I will be talking to you on cargo liquefaction, one of very relevant matters recently. In fact, it's not a new topic, but it has been getting more headlines as you would have noticed in the media reports with increasing amount of rainfall. So climate change, it is affecting the quality of the solid bulk cargoes that are required to be shipped. So liquefaction is one of the aspects that from the club side, we notice a number of issues. So without further ado, let me move to the next slide. Right. So just to start with a bit of a background on solid bulk cargoes. These cargoes are regulated under the International Maritime Solid Bulk Cargoes IMSBC code, and IMSBC code is mandated under the SOLAS Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. It has been mandatory since 1st of January 2011, and broadly speaking, IMSBC code categorizes solid bulk cargoes in three groups. That is, Group A, cargoes that may liquefy; Group B, cargoes that poses chemical hazards; and Group C, which are neither Group A nor Group B, i.e. Non-hazardous cargoes. But even though there are a number of cargoes listed in the IMSBC code, and for the cargoes that are listed in the IMSBC code, there is a section defining that, which mentions section 1.2. It also mentions section 1.2 that the guidance provided in the IMSBC code is not exhaustive. What this means is that there are still a number of cargoes that are not listed in this code, and often for cargoes that are listed in this code, there are cases where we come across issues where the cargoes does not correspond to what is stated in this code. So section 1.2 is one of the key sections for the reader to refer to. Apart from that, the other key section is section 1.3 and section 1.5. Now, section 1.3 talks about the cargoes that are not listed in this code. And this section says that in cases where the cargoes are not listed in this code, the shipper has an obligation to provide a full detail of the cargo, the physical and chemical properties of the cargoes, and to list whether this cargo will be exhibiting a sort of a dangerous character, that is either Group A or Group B. And if it is the case, then the competent authority from the load port should be providing the full details of the hazardous property, and based on that competent authority of the load port details, then there needs to be a tripartite agreement between the competent authority of the load port, the competent authority of the discharge port, and the ship's flag state. Likewise, for section 1.5, which is exemptions and equivalent measures, it needs to be authorized and accepted by the competent authorities of the load port, discharge code, and the ship's flag state. Now, this IMSBC code, like I said, is the list is not exhaustive. There are a list of amendments that are incorporated in this code every 2 years. And the next amendment, which is 05/2019, it will be coming mandatory from 1st of January 2021. But it can be voluntarily applied by some contracting governments from 1st of January 2020. Now, the major changes that are going to be in this next amendment that will be applicable from January 2021 are in regards to the cargo of bauxite, which I will be discussing later in my few slides, and then seed cake and some of the additional cargoes that have been added in this, the next edition, which is the IMSBC code 2020 that you can see in this slide. Apart from that, there is a hazardous material hazardous in bulk notational reference that has been added in the code, which basically identifies the type of the hazard that solid bulk cargo will be posing in terms of its properties. Now, under the other requirements stated in the IMSBC code, under section 4.2, the shipper has an explicit duty to provide with an appropriate information on the cargo sufficiently in advance of the loading. For Group A cargoes, the ship should be provided with a transportable moisture lists certificate, which is valid for 6 months prior to loading, and a moisture content certificate, which is valid for 7 days from the period of loading, from the time the loading has started. The moisture content certificate needs to be reissued by the shipper after a period of rain, because after there has been any precipitation, the moisture content will subsequently go up, and there will be a need of issuing doing a retesting of the moisture content. What needs to be ensured for Group A cargoes particularly is that moisture content should not be higher than the transportable moisture limit of the cargo. Okay, so for Group A cargoes, IMSBC code lists different methods of testing of moisture content and flow moisture point. Flow moisture point is the point where the cargo basically liquefies, and transportable moisture limit is generally 90% or less than the flow moisture point. The transportable moisture limit is the key which should be the maximum limit, and the moisture content should be always less than the transportable moisture limit. Within these different methods of testing, each method has its advantage, and the selection of the test method is determined by the local practices or by the appropriate authorities, which is the competent authority of the load port. The IMSBC code also describes a shipboard method, which is a can test, which you can see in this picture, for checking whether the cargo is suitable for shipment or not. Now, this can test is just a rudimentary test, and it should not be a replacement for a proper laboratory testing under the proper methodology. This can test involves filling a small can of the sample cargo and repeatedly banging it on a hard surface. The appearance of the material at the end of the can test could be used to form an opinion regarding the suitability of the material for its shipment. If the can test shows a propensity of liquefaction, which you can see in the bottom right picture, then it is a major warning sign that this cargo, the whole cargo batch, may be unsafe for carriage. Coming to our main topic of liquefaction and dynamic separation, like I said, this is very relevant now because of the effects of the climate change. We are seeing unusual dry, rainy seasons and more typhoons, which makes the cargo wet and thereby increases the risk of liquefaction. So what is liquefaction? Let me show you by a way of a video.
So this is the liquefaction out the back. Dug it out, so you can see across the rose bed all the sand has just come up out of the ground, and I've got a wheelbarrow full of it at the moment. It's quite solid, so you'll see this re-liquefy as we go back out to the driveway, particularly as we drive across the cobbles on the driveway. get a little bit back to there now. It's here. So now the bubbles are shaking now. They're all liquefied. This is exactly what happens to city buildings on top. Just turns to liquid. Tell them to stop moving. Solidifies or stabilizes fractionally. So this is why buildings are busy falling over with this liquefaction happening from solid to level liquid.
So as you may see from this video, a cargo like this may appear to be in a relatively dry granular state when loaded. However, they may still contain sufficient moisture to become fluid under the stimulus of compaction and vibration that occurs during the voyage. The result of the cargo ship can be sufficient enough to cause a structural damage or capsize a vessel. Liquefaction, like I said, is not something new. It's a phenomena where the relatively dry-looking soil-like material is transformed from a solid dry state to a fluid state. Cargoes that are at the risk of liquefaction are those containing fine particles and moisture. Although they need not to be visibly wet in appearance, but then they could cause considerable danger during the voyage because of the vibration and compaction. There have been a number of incidents and casualties that have happened in the past, mostly involving mineral ores and concentrates, where the cargo has liquefied. The number of incidents have happened involving nickel ore, particularly from Indonesia and Philippines. We have also seen cases of manganese ore, iron ore finds from India. So these are the typical cases that we have seen previously in regards to liquefaction. Dynamic separation, on the other hand, is a relatively new term, and it came to existence after the unfortunate incident of Bulk Jupiter in 2015. So bauxite typically was, in the previous edition of IMSBC code, listed as a group C, that is non-hazardous cargo. But then Bulk Jupiter was carrying a cargo of bauxite from Kuantan, Malaysia in 2015, and near the coast of Vietnam, it capsized and sank. Unfortunately, there was only one survivor, and 19 people died from that incident. And at that particular time, it was thought that it is perhaps liquefaction that caused the incident. But after this incident, there was a major study done, and the concept of dynamic separation came into existence. Now, why Bulk Jupiter sank was because of the reason where the cargo, a common practice in Malaysia called sieving, where the cargo is being passed through a high water pressure jets to force through rotary sieves. This process not only removes larger particles of the cargo, but it also increases the moisture content. Typically under the individual schedule of bauxite, which is Group C cargo of IMSBC code, it lists around 70 to 90% of lumps and 10 to 30% of fine powder. But this sieving process was effectively changing the cargo property. It was making more fines and enhanced moisture content. And that was the reason why the IMSBC code next amendment contains bauxite in two different schedules. One is Group A, which the cargo that may liquefy, and the other one is Group C, which is continuing from before. But pending adoption into changes into ISM code, IMO has implemented its guideline, which is mentioned in this slide, in a way of a circular, and this is applicable since 2017. So coming into the concept of difference between the liquefaction and dynamic separation. So what happens in liquefaction, which you can see in the bottom three pictures, is basically the moisture which is entrapped between the dry particle. That moisture breaks the cohesive bond in between those particles, and because of that breakage of the cohesive bond, the cargo will basically liquefy. under the influence of an external factor, which could be compaction or vibration during the voyage. However, in case of dynamic separation, the moisture of the cargo migrates to the surface and the cargo compacts underneath due to vibration. Now, this occurs when the cargo contains enough small particles to stop the moisture draining from the cargo. As the slurry of water and particles collect on the top of the cargo, it creates a free surface effect in the hold. And over the time, with the when the wave periods of the slurry in different holds synchronizes, the ship's stability could become effective and the ship could capsize. Coming to key concerns. Now, if you look into the losses, a recent report from Intercargo highlighted that cargo failure, which is liquefaction, continues to be a major concern for dry bulk shipping. If you look into these statistics, nearly one ship is lost each year. Between 2010 and 2019, 106 lives were lost from 8 casualties attributed to cargo failure or liquefaction. These consisted of 6 bulk carriers carrying nickel ore from Indonesia, 1 vessel with iron ore finds from Malaysia, and 1 vessel was bulk Jupiter carrying bauxite from Malaysia. But the loss of ship does not just happen. It is a result of sequence of circumstances, elements, and decisions that lead to the tragic consequence. So elaborating on those points, I already mentioned about the deteriorating weather trends, which are affecting the properties of Group A cargoes particularly. And nickel ore, which is predominantly being exported from Indonesia and Philippines, Southeast Asia. This year, Southeast Asia has been experiencing more than usual rainfall. In fact, if you would have seen the news reports, they are coining the term called La Nina sort of effect, where there is more than usual rainfall happening this year within the Southeast Asia. Earlier, because of the loss of a ship carrying nickel ore last year in Indonesia, Indonesia imposed a ban of exports. But that does not mean that the shipment of nickel ore is not happening in Indonesia. It is very much happening, but mostly on the domestic trade. The exports have been stopped. While because of this export ban from Indonesia, new emerging markets are coming up, while Philippines remains the topmost exporter of the nickel ore. Now, like I said, new emerging markets, these are the places from West Africa. We have seen issues from Ivory Coast, Mauritania. There are more exports of nickel ore coming from places like New Caledonia or Guatemala, where there have been consistent amount of issues that we have been seeing. And the reason why there have been issues, because there are either no competent authorities at such ports, or even if there are any competent authority, they are not very well aware of their duties. The other issue is that most mines in these places are situated in a remote location, and these places are not very easily accessible. The area is controlled by the miners, and they have their monopoly around that region. Mines do not provide any access to local surveyors to test or inspect the cargo prior to loading. Moreover, there are no reliable labs, as the cargo certificates are issued by the miners' in-house laboratories. These cargo certificates cannot be trusted, and they could be very well biased. In order to obtain results from an independent, reliable lab, the samples may need to be sent overseas. For example, from Southeast Asia, the Philippines, the cargo sample may need to be sent to Singapore or Hong Kong, while samples from West Africa may need to be sent to United Kingdom to do a proper testing. However, during this transport, there could be a condition where the considerable amount of moisture may be lost from the sample during the course of the transportation, particularly if the sample is not packed and sealed properly. The other issues that we see is in these places, in particular for nickel ore I'm talking about, cargo stockpiles are not covered. And sometimes we have heard reports where the attending surveyors have been threatened and they've been held under duress to report things which may actually not be true. So that is another challenge that we are seeing. Usually, what happens is the places where these cargoes are loaded, the ships are anchored nearly 10 to 20 miles from the nearest coast. And usually, they are more than, when they are more than one vessel loading in the area, if the is being up into the port again, it will be presented to another ship, and it could, the barge will keep on going to a number of ships until there will be one vessel that is that accepts that and takes that risk of accepting the cargo. We have also seen a number of cases where the ship has been held under commercial pressure to accept the cargo. Even there have been reasonable doubts on this condition. Several ship owners have been too scared or too shy not to strain their relationship with the charterers and accept the cargo. And if something goes wrong, then the master is usually made a scapegoat. So I was talking about the master being made a scapegoat. So basically what happens in such condition, if something goes wrong, then generally the master will be, basically in such condition, the master is caught in a dilemma of either accepting the cargo uh, uh, or not. He might be asked to be replaced. So once that is the issue, then the most of the time, the 50-50%, the master goes ahead and accept the cargo. Some masters who are not accepting, they have been replaced at times. So these are quite challenging issues that we come across. And the other thing is lack of infrastructure. Once the cargo is loaded on board, the shipper may not be able, may not even accept the cargo to be discharged. So whatever testing that needs to be done has to be done well in advance of accepting the cargo on board. It was with these reasons that the international group of P&I clubs issued a circular in 2012 requiring the members to notify the club when their ship is fixed or ordered to load nickel ore, particularly from Indonesia or Philippines, so that a precautionary survey can be arranged for such cargoes by the club. However, the conditions have changed since, and even the IMSBC code has gone through several updates since then. And that is why there has been a proposal at the recent International Group Claim Subcommittee where we propose to revise this cargo. But meanwhile, this circular remains very well in effect. Even though Indonesia has imposed an export ban, there is cargo being exported from Philippines, and there are new emerging markets, like I said, like from New Caledonia or Guatemala, from where this cargo is being exported. So the conditions listed in this circular is very well in force as of now as well. Now coming to the main topic of the surveyor's role and what the club's expectation is when appointing a surveyor for a precautionary survey for a Group A cargo. So what we expect is the surveyor should obtain the copies of shipper declaration. If the member or the ship owner has received that, then it has been forwarded to the club. Then we will share it with the surveyor. And this cargo declaration, shipper's declaration, should be accompanied together with the certificates of cargo moisture content. Like I said, it is valid for 7 days from the date of loading, and transportable moisture limit, which is valid for 6 months from prior to loading. The moisture content should be verified that it is less than transportable moisture limit. If the cargo has been exposed to rain during the course of loading, then the surveyor has to liaise with the local authorities or local the shipper and their representative and the master to get another testing of the moisture content done. Now, nickel ore particularly has a high clay content, and it contains substantial proportion of material coarser than 7 mm. So that's where we recommend in order to obtain accurate moisture content of the nickel ore cargo, the testing should be done for fines greater than 7 mm particle size, and for the part of the cargo which is the fines that are less than 7 particle size. Failure to do so will overstate the safety of the cargo, and it may lead the cargoes being accepted, which are actually unsafe for loading. Now, prior to loading, what we recommend is the surveyor to go at least a day and arrive at the load port, because most of these places are very inaccessible. So the surveyor needs to be at the place, the load port, or the point of loading where the cargo stockpiles are kept at least a day before, and carry out a visual inspection of the cargo stockpiles ashore. What you see in these pictures is that the stockpile is very well kept, covered by from the weather elements, but this may not be the case always. So the surveyor has to check and take pictures whether the cargo stockpiles has been kept covered to avoid exposure from the weather elements or not. The surveyor should also check the composition or the characteristics of the cargo that is presented for loading, and match it with the cargo declaration form. The description should be the similar which is mentioned in the cargo declaration form and which is being presented for loading. For example, in cases of bauxite, if the bauxite presented for loading is showing more fine particles, and what is listed in the cargo declaration form is more of lumps, then it is not corresponding, and the surveyor should raise an alarm, inform the club, inform the member at that instance. And loading should not be allowed. What you see in the second picture is that the cargo at stockpiles is being excavated. So when you excavate the cargo and dig in, at least from 50 centimeter below the surface, take random samples of those from the cargo stockpile, and carry out can test to check whether this cargo is showing a propensity to liquefy or not. If there is reasonable doubt, then certainly that cargo will not be suitable for carriage. On boarding the ship, have a meeting with the master and deck officers, brief them on the condition of the cargo that you have seen ashore, and introduce them to the stevedore foreman or shipper's representative with whom you met a day before, or maybe on the same day earlier during the same day. So basically there needs to be a cordial relationship if the loading has to go ahead, and get that relationship established when you are on board. Then check the condition of the cargo holds, hatch covers, and associated deck fittings. See whether the ship is cargo worthy to carry the proposed cargo or not. If the cargo will be loaded by barge, then carry out a similar visual inspection of the cargo in each barge upon its arrival. Do the same excavation of the cargo. Check, do the can test after digging at least 50 centimeter below the surface, and check whether the cargo is showing a propensity to liquefy or not. Watch out for these signs. If you see puddle of waters, or if you see that there are some moist spots on the cargo barges, because quite often there have been cases where the cargo has been actually just being sun-dried, but then the effectiveness of this sun-drying method, which is very commonly used by some of the shippers or the miners, is actually questionable. While the surface of the cargo might be dry, there will be considerable amount of moisture below the surface, and that's why I've been mentioning dig at least 50 centimeter down below the cargo surface and check the condition of the cargo when after digging, after excavating the cargo. Yeah. So watch out for these signs and send daily reports together with the associated pictures. These are the signs showing when you are carrying out the can test. If before even the can test, the cargo is showing enhanced moisture content. And after the can test, you can see that it is quite moist. So this cargo will be definitely not suitable for carriage. Apart from can test, if there is a marginal case, so if the surveyor might not be able to understand whether the can test is absolutely sure or not. So what we recommend in that, carry out a grass test. So after carrying out the can test, take that cargo, take it out and do a grass test. If it is seeping out of the fingers, then it is showing the cargo is still quite moist and it may liquefy. And even if it passes through the can test and the grass test and the cargo has been commenced for loading, then there will be another sign to check, which is the splatter inside the cargo holds. And the splatter will be a good indication showing that the moisture content is quite high, which you can see in the picture. But then by that time, it is perhaps quite late that the cargo, the moist cargo has already been accepted and it has been loaded on board. And like I said in my earlier slide, that once the cargo has been loaded on board, it becomes rather difficult to get it off from the ship. So before the ship has departed, make sure all these daily reports have been sent. And after the ship departure, the final report can be sent as well. What is important that before the ship has departed, make sure that the cargo is trimmed evenly, and all the possibilities of likelihood of cargo shifting has been minimized because of proper trimming of the cargo. That is an important aspect as well. And after the ship has departed, then based on all the daily reports, which is basically comprising of the cargo that has been accepted, the cargo that has been rejected, the barges that have been coming, the identification of the barges, identification of the cargo samples, all these information needs to be there in the daily report, and all that cumulatively you can put in the final report together with the associated pictures. Make sure that the pictures are date and time stamped, which comes useful in terms of pursuing any case against the other party. So that will help the club in defending our members' interests. Now, coming to my last slide is basically mentioning that we have published a number of these articles, and these publications are freely available on the club's website to download. The one that you are seeing on the far left side, guidelines for the safe carriage of nickel ore, was issued recently, in fact, a few months back, and it contains the latest up-to-date guidelines of the scenario of nickel ore from places like Indonesia, Philippines, New Caledonia, and Guatemala, the major 4 places from where the nickel ore being exported at present. So it contains up-to-date information on that aspect, and all other publications that you see on this slide, on this slide is equally important, or equally giving the good guidelines on the safe carriage of Group A cargoes. So please feel free to go through the club's website and take these information. With that, I am done, and I will open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Akshat. Excellent, very, very interesting, valuable presentation on, as you say, a subject that's not new, but that continues to cause concern. And I'd just now like to open up and say, does anybody have any questions for, pardon me, for Akshat? Anything anybody would like to ask? You've stunned everybody into silence, Akshat. I know Rushin Dial is online as well. I know Rushin's done a lot of work in this area. I don't know if you want to pop up, Rushin, and add anything.